Random House Audio presents The Devil's Teeth, a true story of survival and obsession among America's great white sharks, by Susan Casey. Read for you by the author. The killing took place at dawn, and as usual it was a decapitation, accomplished by a single, vicious swipe. Blood geysered into the air, creating a vivid slick that stood out on the water like the work of a violent abstract painter. 500 yards away, outside of a lighthouse on the island's highest peak, a man watched through a telescope. First, he noticed the frenzy of gulls, bird gestalt that signaled trouble, and then he saw the blood. Grabbing his radio, he turned and began to run. His transmission jolted awake the 4 other people on the island. "We've got an attack off Sugarloaf, big one it looks like, lot of blood." The house at the bottom of the hill echoed with the sounds of scientist Peter Pyle hurrying, running down the stairs, pulling on his knee-high rubber boots, slamming the old door behind him as he sprinted to the boat launch. Peter and his colleague, Scott Anderson, the voice on the radio, jumped into their 17-foot Boston whaler. The boat rested on a bed of rubber tires beside a cliff. It was attached to a crane which lifted it up and into the air. The crane swung the whaler over the lip and lowered it 30 feet into the massive early winter swells of the Pacific. Peter unhooked the winch, an inch-thick cable of steel, as the whaler rose and fell into troughs big enough to swallow it. He started the engine and powered 200 yards toward the birds, where the object of all the attention floated in a cloud of blood. A 1/4-ton elephant seal that was missing its head. The odor was dense and oily, rancid Crisco mixed with seawater. "Oh yeah," Peter said. "That's the smell of a shark attack." In a world where very little is known for certain, they knew that below them a great white shark was orbiting, waiting for the seal to bleed some more, and that this shark would soon be returning for breakfast. It might be Betty or Mama or the Cadillac, one of the huge females that patrolled the east side of the island. These big girls, all of them over 17 feet long, were known as the Sisterhood. Or it might be a smaller male, 13 or 14 feet, like Spotty or T-Nose or the sneaky Cal Ripfin. These sharks were called the Rat Pack. It might be any number of great whites. At this time of the year there were scores of them cruising this 120-acre patch of sea, swimming close to the shoreline of southeast Farallone Island as hapless seals washed out of finger gullies at high tide and into the danger zone. In any given year, more than 1,000 people will be maimed by toilet bowl cleaning products or killed by cattle. Fewer than a dozen will be attacked by a great white shark. In this neighborhood, however, those odds do not count. At the Farallone Islands, during the months of September through November, your chance of meeting a great white face-to-face is better than even money, should you be crazy enough or unlucky enough to end up in the water. The 2 men stood at the stern holding long poles capped with video cameras. There were several beats of the kind of absolute silence that you hardly ever get in life, eerie moments when time seemed to stop and even the birds became quiet. Then, 50 yards away, the ocean swirled into a boil. The dorsal fin of myth and nightmare rose from below and came tunneling toward them like a German U-boat, creating a sizable wake. The shark made a tight pass around the boat, pulling up just short of the stern. Its body, which was almost black as it broke the surface, glowed with cobalt and turquoise highlights underwater. "He's coming up!" Peter yelled. The whaler rocked. A massive triangle of a head lifted out of the water and, in a surprisingly delicate way, bit the back corner of the boat. Scott leaned closer and filmed. The shark's black eyes rolled. They could plainly see the scars all over its head and its 2-inch-long teeth, backed by rows of spare 2-inch-long teeth. Then, as quickly as it had come, the shark slipped beneath the surface, dove under the boat, and re-emerged next to the seal. As the great white snatched the carcass, shaking it, bright orange blood burst from the sides of its mouth. "It's Bitehead," Scott said. He broke into a full-faced smile beneath his wraparound sunglasses. "Ah, Bitehead," Peter said. There was a moment of pleased recognition, as if greeting a fond acquaintance they just happened to run into on the street. "We've known this shark for 10 years. Every September, one of the world's largest and densest congregations of great white sharks assembles in the waters surrounding the Farallone Islands, a 211-acre archipelago of 10 islets in the Pacific, 27 miles due west of the Golden Gate Bridge. No one fully understands what this gathering represents, why great whites, the ocean's most solitary hunters, choose to reside for a period of time in such close quarters. What's known for sure is that the sharks remain at this location for approximately 3 months. And this, having studied them for over a decade and a half in the Farallone Islands White Shark Project, Scott Anderson and Peter Pyle have discovered that year after year, the same sharks return to exactly the same spot. This annual reunion is at least partly about hunting. Despite strange inventories of items found in great white stomachs, a cuckoo clock, a fur cape, license plates and lobster traps, a buffalo head, an entire reindeer, and even, in one unlikely scenario, a man dressed in a full suit of armor, what these sharks really love to eat are seals. And the Farallones are dripping with seals. Northern elephant seals, harbor seals, fur seals, seals, all barking and bellowing, draped on the rocks like a blubbery carpet. It wasn't always this way. The island's seals, which once numbered in the tens of thousands, were hunted almost to extinction 150 years ago. Only after Southeast Farallone Island, the largest in the group, became a wildlife refuge in 1969 did the populations begin to recover. And as the seals returned, no one was happier to see them than the sharks. In 1970, Farallone biologists witnessed their first shark attack on a Steller's sea lion, a brawny animal that itself looks like a predator. During the next 15 years, more than 80 attacks on seals and sea lions were observed at close range. But the sharks were only warming up. By the year 2000, Peter and Scott were logging almost 100 attacks in a single season. Still, even accounting for the allure of a seal smorgasbord, why did these particular sharks keep returning? And why were they clustered together so tightly? No one had ever observed such behavior among great whites before. Not that anyone's had the opportunity. The Farallone Islands are the only place on Earth where it's possible to study great white sharks behaving naturally in the wild. Unsubjected, that is, to the presence and fumblings of humans. In South Africa's Shark Alley, near the town of Ons Bay, the channel is stained red with chum, and often there are a dozen boats banging up against each other while as many as 60 divers sardined into steel cages clog the 1,000-yard-wide passage. In Australia, great white sharks contend with underwater electrical charges, beaches ringed by netting, trophy fishing, and more chumming. The Farallone great whites, on the other hand, are largely unharassed. They might cross paths with the occasional boatload of day trippers from San Francisco, but they're subjected to none of the behavior-altering coercion that nature's top predators regularly endure so that people can sit in the Winnebago or the Tundra buggy or a safari truck and get a look at them. This is important because despite their visibility at the Farallones, and despite the impressive truth that sharks are so old they predate trees, great whites have remained among the most mysterious of creatures. Even now, after the human genome has been reduced to an alphabet set and spaceships are trolling around on Mars, scientists are still missing some basic information about the species. How long do they live? Unknown. But probably at least 30 years, considering that white sharks don't mature until they're over 10 years old. All the sharks at the Farallones are adults, and some individuals have been showing up for more than a decade. There are scientists who speculate that they live as long as 60 years, but that remains unproven. Where do they mate, or when, or how often, or even how? There are clues to the sex lives of great white sharks, but no facts. Scott and Peter have discovered that while the males return annually, the females return only every other year, often with fresh, deep bites.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?